Hi, everybody. Welcome to the March 2024 episode of Plant Powered, Conversations that Sprout Ethical Change. My name is Johanna, and I'm here with my friend and co-host Brieanah.
Hey there.
And today's episode is a special one because we're joined by a fellow changemaker and vegan business owner, Mitali Deypurkaystha. Mitali helps B Corp founders, ethical entrepreneurs, sustainability practitioners, and social entrepreneurs put their mission, movement, and message on the map so that together they can change the world one book at a time. She's also a keynote speaker, owner of The Vegan Publisher, a book consultancy, and Let's Tell Your Story publishing imprint. She's also the author of the international bestseller, The Freedom Master Plan, which reveals how her clients leverage their books to amplify their voices and build unshakable authority. And her mission is to amplify the voices of purpose-driven experts, leaders, and entrepreneurs, so the screams to end the exploitation of humans, animals, and the planet will no longer will become too loud to be ignored. So welcome, Mitali. We're really happy and grateful that you joined us here today.
Thank you so much for having me.
Cool. So yeah, to get the interview started, we're both vegans, and it's a vegan series that we're hosting here. So we love hearing about people's stories. Could you tell us how you became vegan? What's your unique story?
I think my story is quite unique because now I've been vegan now since 2012. So it's coming up to 12 years, and I have a lot of vegans in my life. And it's quite interesting. A lot of them, they went to a festival and there were activists there who started speaking to them, or a friend or a partner of theirs became vegan and they then understood about veganism. Whereas for me, nothing like that happened. I didn't go to a festival. I wasn't an activist that spoke to me. I didn't watch another route tends to be documentaries nowadays. So people watch something like, Cowspiracy or Fork Over Knives, and then they go, oh my God, and then they become vegan. Nothing like that happened. I obviously live in my own little world where nothing touches me. I had no idea. Basically, all that happened was in 2009, my family decided to adopt a cat, which I didn't even want, because I was just like, oh, God, there's going to be fur everywhere. My house is never going to be clean. It's always going to smell, and I will no longer even be able to smell it anymore. So my neighbors will smell it. And I really didn't want a cat, or not just a cat, just any animal in my house, really. I didn't grow up with a family pet. So we didn't do the whole, I think it's an Indian thing, certainly British Indians now do have family dogs and cats and that sort of thing. But from India in general, the culture really isn't to have animals in the house. Animals tend to be beings that live outside the house. It's just a cultural thing. So we never had that. We never had the family dog or anything. So I was just like, oh God, no. But I was outvoted. The rest of the family wanted this cat. So this cat turns up in my life. I really didn't want it. And then within 2 weeks, typically I'd fallen in love with her. And I would just watch this little being walk around, and she was so sentient, so hyper aware. She would even know which person in the family had had a bad day at work or had a bad day at school, because my little sister was at school at the time. And she would go and spend time with the person who's had a bad day. And I just thought, oh crap, they are far more intelligent than we give them credit for. And then I went down the typical rabbit hole that you do, when you start to research and you find more stuff, and then you realize how much you don't know, and then you keep researching. And I discovered that cats are not even really all that intelligent in the animal kingdom. Like pigs are more intelligent than dogs, and we eat them. Rats are more intelligent than cats, but we test on rats, and cats we cuddle. So it literally makes no sense. And that's when I just thought, I don't want to I just couldn't do it anymore. So I couldn't even become vegetarian, because even that didn't make sense, because I thought, well, that's a bit like saying, I want to protect these species, but you cows, I don't like you. I'm just going to focus all the pain and torture and rape and murder on you and not the other species. So I couldn't even become an ethical vegetarian, because that to me is a misnomer. It doesn't make sense ethical vegetarianism. So I had to go completely vegan. It did take me 2 years. I did the typical thing that we all do. We try and fool ourselves into thinking, oh well, what I'll do is I'll just go to ethical farms, or I'll go organic farms, or or I'll make sure that it's free range farm. And you go through all that nonsense for a bit, and then after 2 years, I just thought, this is just hypocrisy. It's like having ethical slavery, or there's no such thing really. So it took me 2 years, but I just finally went, that's it. So yeah, that was back in 2012, and since then I've been happy as a vegan. So that's my story. A cat did this to me. A cat.
We love a cat creating change.
Yeah, well, yes, a cat created a monumental change in me. And then now look at what I'm doing. I don't even think I would be the founder of the vegan publisher if it weren't for the fact that I went vegan. So yeah, this cat managed to, it not only affected my personal life, but pretty much how I show up in the world, what I do in the world. So yeah.
Would you say the cat inspired you to start your business, or what was your motivation to start the vegan publisher?
I don't think the cat inspired. That would be amazing. She's passed away now, but she's so proud. It's like I inspired a whole business. No, she didn't do that, because there is a lapse of. I went vegan in 2012, and then I started my publishing house in 2018. So there's 6 years difference. Plus, it wasn't the vegan publisher then, it was Let's Tell You Story Publishing, which remains my publishing imprint. So no, she didn't actually inspire me to help people write books. I come from a journalist background, and then I became a copywriter, content writer for a number of businesses around the world. And then one of my clients asked me to write a book for him. I remember saying to him, I have no idea how to do this. I don't think I'm the right person. I'm a copywriter. And he said, but I don't really want anybody else to write for me, because you get me. You understand my brand. You understand my voice. You understand my business. I want you to write it. So you take as long as you want and go write books. So that's how I got into writing books for other people. And then I realized, after I've written 7 of them and they'd all become bestsellers, I just thought, I've got a little formula now that I've created. Why don't I show people this formula? And teach people to write their own books. And that way, there's only so many books I'm willing to write myself. I don't really want to write lots and lots of books. But if I can teach people to write their own books, I can help exponentially more people. So to answer your question, Brieanah, the vegan publisher didn't actually come about until the pandemic. I think the pandemic did a lot of strange things to a lot of people. And one of the things it did for me is, I think sometimes when you're living in a busy life, and we'll all live busy lives now, you're just kind of on this treadmill, and you keep going. You're not really thinking much. And then it takes something like the pandemic to happen for you to be forced to have some time off, and you're cut off from your contacts, and you're stuck at home with nothing to do. And that's when I really started to think about, well, who am I serving, and am I truly happy with what I'm doing? And it just kind of dawned on me that, why am I helping the average business owner or expert write books, when the people who have my heart are the animal activists, the social entrepreneurs, the B Corp founders, the people who are not just talking the talk. Everyone seems to be on a purpose-driven mission right now. It drives me crazy. Like on LinkedIn, everyone's on a purpose-driven mission. And then you scratch beneath the surface, it's all profits. And you're just thinking, you don't really care. You've just attended some webinar telling you now need a mission, and it needs to be, purpose-driven and all that. They're just using these words as a way of sounding right in 2024, which is why when the pandemic happened, I just made this decision. I just thought, no, I specifically want to work with people who are genuinely making a difference in the world. And I want to be a publisher for them, and not just any expert or leader or business owner. So yeah, the cat didn't have anything to do. That was a pandemic, actually. Although that, to be honest, sadly is to do with animals, because as it seems that it was built, our mistreatment of animals in wet markets in Asia, that seems to have caused the pandemic. So animals just don't get a break, do they? They just never get a break.
Sadly, no. And yeah, that's why we're trying to do what we do. Like I just love how outspoken and like straightforward and like how you own your mission. I like this is what I kind of aim for too, and hope to, or like want to help others be as in their mission. It's really inspiring. So you're a professional in book publishing, and you help mission driven, like vegan ethical businesses become best-selling authors. I wanted to ask, like, why is writing a book such a great, well, since we work in marketing, why is it such a great marketing strategy, or strategy in general? Could you like talk a little bit more about this?
Well, I think the reason why book works so well and why I've specialized in it is because it makes you stand out like a sore thumb in the nicest possible way. And so before the pandemic, I was doing a lot of sort of in-person talks, and something that I would do is I would get the audience to get up on their feet. And then I would say, I want you to, because usually I'm speaking to businesses and brand owners and people like that. So I'd say, I want you to stay standing up if you have a website. And most people stay standing up. Sometimes maybe you get one or two people who sit down. Maybe they have like a local business that doesn't really need a website because they have, people, they have just foot traffic coming into their business. Or I've spoken to, sometimes influencers don't have their own websites because their shop front is Instagram or TikTok or whatever. But most people stay standing up because what kind of brand or business owner are you if you don't have a website? People just don't even take you seriously nowadays. Then I'd say something along the lines of stay standing up if you use social media in some capacity for your business. You do content on social. And again, most people stay standing up. And then I'll say, let's stay standing up if you've written a book as an authority figure for your business or brand. And it's like a crash of people sitting down, loads of noisy chairs. And sometimes one or two people will stay standing up. It's quite interesting to see how the crowd reacts to that, because they usually look around and go, oh, have you written a book? Oh, tell me what your book is. I'll go and get it. It's on Amazon. I'd love to go and get your book. I didn't realize it, but no one does that with anything else. If I said, I've got a website, no one, you would not go, Johanna. You wouldn't be like, oh, you have a website, Mitali? Tell me your website. I need to go on. It's a website. It's like everyone has one. It's like now you just have to have one as a business or brand owner. You have to have one. You have to be using social media. Most of us are blogging and doing articles and doing videos, and all of that is necessary. I'm not saying write a book and forget all about that. You absolutely still need to do all of that. But the book is the thing that makes you different. I've spoken in front of groups of all kinds of people. I could speak to a group of accountants and the message still rings true. Most of them will have websites. Most of them will be using social media. Most of them are doing all the other content that you need to do, but hardly any of them have written a book. If you've written a book, you stand out. You're now seen as, you must be better than all of these people because you're an authority. So that's the main reason. The second reason is, and this is something I didn't realize until I'd started helping the first few clients back in 2018. They would come back to me after they'd written their book and they would say, what's been really good about this whole process of planning and writing the book is it's given me my, one lady called it her true north. It's like her true manifesto or mission. And that is her compass now. So all the other content, she has someone like you, she has like a content writer and a copywriter who does all the stuff, but she's got them to read a book. She's like, this is what I stand for. Take that and then you spin that out and you create your own content on the back of it and do whatever you want. But this is what I stand for. These are my values. This is what my brand is all about. This is where I want the world to be. And it's like, she calls it her Bible. It's like her Bible now. And I thought that's a secondary reason that I didn't realize helps people. That once you've gone through the process, you intimately know your mission and your brand now. And that can come out if you're doing keynote speaking engagements, if you're on a podcast like this. You said before you was very straight. Well, I've written a book. That's why I know exactly what I stand for, what my values are. So when I'm at a podcast, I'm very clear about what I do, how I serve people, where I want the world to be. And that is an extra benefit. It just makes you very clear. And I'm sure you'll agree with me, Johanna. I'm sure you help a lot of your clients get really clear about what they want to say. Well, writing a book is a shortcut to getting very, very clear on what you want to say and how you want to show up in the world.
I wonder too, do you feel like publishing a book can have a larger impact on a movement like this, like the plant-based movement and animal rights movement? Like, yes, it makes you an authority, but how can it shape a movement?
Well, I guess it's all about clout, really, that annoying word that Instagrammers use all the time. But we do have a lot of shortcuts in our brain as humans, and they're there for a reason. They're there. We are the most efficient species that's ever lived on this planet, to the detriment of other species, sadly. But we are the most successful species, and the reason why is we are the most efficient. And one of the key reasons why we're so efficient is we're able to make shortcuts in our brain as to, like, but the problem is, the busier we're now getting, and we're just increasingly getting busier, some of these shortcuts no longer make sense. It's actually now gone the opposite. Instead of being intelligent, we're being stupid. And one of the key things that we have shortcuts in is who to believe in and who not to believe in, whose words we should take weight and whose words we shouldn't. Now, I always jokingly say it's interesting that we have, if I said to you, in fact, let me do this as a test to both of you, Johanna and Brieanah. So if I was to say somebody reads a lot, what is the automatic assumption you make?
They're smart.
Yeah, I would say the same.
And if you say someone watches TV all the time, what assumption would you make?
They're lazy, or yeah.
Now, in reality, it's nonsense, because the person watching TV all day, they could be tuned into the History Channel, the Discovery Channel, National Geographic. That's the sort of person you want to hang around with. They know a lot and they'll be very interesting. The person who's reading a lot could be reading those crappy novels that you get in Tesco's, they're getting rid of for about $1.99. Do you know what I mean? Just nonsense. So it's actually the content that matters. It doesn't really matter whether it's in a written format or in a recorded format, an audio format. And yet we still have these stereotypes that if someone reads a lot, automatically they must be intelligent. And if someone watches too much TV, even that phrase is wrong. Too much TV.
Yeah.
Who the hell says it's too much? What if they're watching lots of great things? But we have that stereotype. So what I'm essentially doing is I'm helping people hack that weakness in the human brain that we just automatically assume that authors need to be taken seriously. And that is why I focus on B Corp founders, vegan activists, ethical business owners, because I'm giving them a way to be taken more seriously. So more people go, oh, actually, this person, I mean, especially as a vegan, I'm sure you've both experienced this. People are like, oh God, you're a vegan. Oh God, here we go. They're going to try and make me feel bad about what I eat and all the rest of it. The fact that I've written a book sometimes makes people go, oh, you written a book on this? Okay. You can still say they're like, don't make me vegan, don't make me vegan. But in their head, they don't want to argue anymore, because they're almost just sort of like, okay, but she's an expert. She's not just some vegan. She actually knows what she's talking about. Mm-hmm. And the book has also allowed me to get onto some mainstream channels that I wouldn't have been able to get onto otherwise. So again, I'm talking about ethics, I'm talking about veganism, I'm talking about a way of life that we all should adopt to people who normally wouldn't listen to me just because I'm an author. So that's why, that is why, because I used to do what you do, Johanna. I was a copywriter and content writer. And a lot of people say, well, why did you specialize in books? Because I could be doing what you're doing, or I could be teaching people how to write their own social media content or their own blog posts, that sort of thing. And I have the experience to do that. But the reason why I chose books is I started to see the effect of books is different to other content. I'm not saying it's more important. You still need the other content, but there's something quite magical about books that, like I said, it's a shortcut in the human brain that instantly assumes that an author is a true expert and therefore what they say should be listened to.
Yeah.
Does that answer your question?
Yeah. Wow, that's I want to do like a mic drop here. You kind of answered my next question, because but let me ask it anyways, or in a different way. Like, you're essentially talking about the power of storytelling, like the way I understand it. And but I would like to hear, like, do you want to dig a little bit deeper into, like, why are stories, like, you're an expert in storytelling, or like, why should we, as the plant-based movement, vegan activists, entrepreneurs, pay more attention to storytelling? Yeah.
Well, stories that's how we learn. Okay, I always say, isn't it interesting, if you look at all of the if you look at the Bible, if you look at the Quran, if you look at the Bhagavad Gita, my background, I mean, I'm actually atheist, believe it or not, but my family have a Hindu background. So our holy book or manuscripts is the Bhagavad Gita, amongst other manuscripts. And it's all quite interesting. You're looking at all these religious texts from around the world, all over the place. And yet they're all said in stories. Now, why is that? Because really they could be about a tenth of the size, and there'd just be a list of do's and don'ts. This is what you need to do to be a good Hindu, Christian, Muslim, Jew, where you know, whatever you identify as, that's great. And then a list of don'ts. Don't do any of these things because you'll be a bad Christian, Muslim, Hindu, Jew, whatever. That could be it. So why don't they do that? Why is it all written in stories? Because human beings, we've known for a very long time, our ancestors found out that we're terrible at retaining information. It really is in one ear and out the other. We're not very good at retaining information, but we wrap it up into a story, then it stays in our long-term memory. Because the reason why is, us human beings, we're very emotional beings. Even the most unemotional people. In fact, I always worry when people say, oh, I'm not very emotional. I'm like, you just need counseling is what you need. Go and see a psychologist pronto, because you're human. You have to be emotional. We are emotional people. So therefore, what stories do that facts and figures can't do is evoke emotion. And when we evoke emotion, that goes into our long-term memory. And it also makes us like people. It makes us dislike certain things. So it's very important, especially as a vegan activist, however your activism shows, if you can show the stories, that's when you can really, you know, bridge the divide amongst vegans and non-vegans. If you're just telling people what to do, I mean, it doesn't matter whether you're just anybody. I mean, I don't think children don't like being told what to do. And to be honest, I don't think we ever grow out of it. We pretend we grow out of it as adults, but I don't think even as adults, we like being told what to do. So when someone says you're wrong, your way of doing things is wrong, and this is how you should do it, what do you expect that person to do? If they've got self-confidence, they'll tell you to shut up. And if they don't have much self-confidence, they'll just shake their heads and go, oh, okay. And then will go back to whatever they're doing, and they won't actually listen to what you said. So when you wrap up what you stand for and why veganism, why we're doing what we're doing, wrapped up in a story, you evoke emotion, and then it makes sense to people. People are then able to, I mean, if you think about it, there's a number of people that after speaking to me, they've become vegan. I'll tell you a story of one lady that happened. This is about 6 months ago. So this is in the summer last year. And I met this lady who's a clairvoyant. And she's been a clairvoyant for, you know, over 2 decades now. And she's a vegetarian. And we got into why she was a vegetarian. And she said, well, you know, I feel energy. I'm an energetic being. And I can just tell from people's energy, I can predict their future and what's going to happen to them. But I don't like to eat meat and fish because that being has died and the energy is there and that's going into me and that affects my energy. I thought, well, that's really interesting. I can imagine that because everything resonates with a frequency. Everything on the planet resonates. So I said, well, what do you think dairy resonates as when it's a product of rape? And she was like, oh. And I started to tell a story of the fact that I'm not sure if I believe in an afterlife and all the rest of it, but I've had certain experiences. I said, I can feel trauma. I can certainly feel trauma. And I was just like, isn't that interesting that you can't feel? And I went through a whole story of how I felt trauma in different, and then she just clicked, and then to get about 2 weeks later, she sent me a message saying, I've gone vegan. Like, I'm never having dairy ever again. Because I didn't make her feel bad. I didn't say, well, that's ridiculous. You won't eat meat because, you know, it's unethical, but you'll eat a product of rape. That's what, can you see what I mean? Just throwing facts at people doesn't work. but you wrap it up into a story of like, this is sort of that things that I've experienced trauma wise, and I can feel things as well, but you can obviously feel a hell of a lot more than me. That's why you're a clairvoyant. And then she was able to, through the story, she was able to put the pieces together herself and that is so much more powerful when you get people to make their own conclusion than handing them the conclusion. When you hand people a conclusion, you're telling them what to do. When they make their own conclusion, it beds in because they feel like they were empowered to make that choice. And she was empowered to make that choice because she realized, wow, the dairy that I'm consuming is interfering with my energies as a clairvoyant. If I give up dairy, I'm not going to have this negative energy in my body. That means my powers will get stronger. And she tells me her powers are stronger. I mean, I don't know how we judge that. It's not like a thermometer, is it, that I can measure her powers in some way? But she tells me that her powers are better, so I'm happy, you know?
That's amazing. What a cool story.
Thank you.
And it makes me wonder, when someone is like, oh, I've considered writing a book, or I don't know if this is right for me, do you usually recommend like when they've had that aha moment and they have that journey to share, or how would you recommend like in your niche or in your business, I think you would benefit from a book versus someone else that maybe isn't ready? How do you determine that?
I would say regarding an idea, this is an interesting one. I'm probably one of the very few book publishers who would actually say this, but it doesn't really matter to me whether you have a solid idea or not. Sometimes, believe it or not, it is better if you don't have a solid idea. I've had some clients who've come to me with it's like, yes, I've got this great idea. And I go, okay, great. So let's actually now do some, let's test this theory. Let's go and find out what your audience wants. And I've got a step-by-step methodology of how to figure out what your audience needs from me. And I find some of my clients don't want to do this. It's almost like, but what if they then tell me they don't like my book idea? They're so married to the idea, they just want to do the idea. So sometimes it's actually better if you don't have a set idea, because it means you're open to discovering what your audience needs. And therefore you can co-craft a book that is exactly what your audience wants. So I'm not really bothered about, if you have a great idea, great, come and speak to me about it. But if you don't have a great idea, that doesn't mean you can't write a book. Sometimes it's even better because we can create the best idea for your audience. Regarding whether someone's ready or not, this is the more important thing, more so than having an idea. It's whether you are ready as a business owner. Now, if you are a startup, there's nothing wrong with writing a book as a startup. I actually have a gentleman right now who started in January. He hasn't even started his business. He's actually going to launch his book and his business at the same time. However, the reason why he's able to do that, he's had a very successful career in corporates for a number of decades. He has money stacked away. And that is why he's able to do this. Even as a startup where the business hasn't even started. So it hasn't made any profits at all. And yet he's able to put the money into not only starting his business, but getting this book done, published to a professional level, and all the marketing that comes with it. But for most businesses, unless you have money backed up, then I wouldn't recommend writing a book at the start. Mainly because just writing, a lot of people kind of believe that you can just stick a book on Amazon and suddenly it will start, bringing loads of money towards you. And it doesn't work that way. You've really got to get out there and leverage the book. So you need social media experts to really get the book out there on social media. You need people like you, Johanna, people who are going to go out and use the book and create content on the based on the book. So whether that's written content or video content, images, what have you. PR experts, if you really want to be on the news, you want to be in newspapers, you want to be on TV, you want to be on radio, you need PR experts doing that. Or you need to have the time, which a lot of people don't if they're running a business, to actually do that yourself, to reach out to journalists and do that kind of outreach and follow up. So it really is suited for people who have reached a certain level of success in their business. And now they're thinking, how do I really stand out now? Those, I would say 80% or more of my clients are people who have reached a level of certainty in their business, a level of success. They usually have even just a small team, even if they just have 1 or 2 people, but there's people who are doing the grunt work of the business. So they're now a little bit out of it and they can focus, and they want to be seen as a thought leader. And yes, the only people, like I said, that I would recommend writing a book right at the beginning of a business or a brand is people who are coming from another sort of corporate or whatever they've been doing and they've made some money. Because I've seen a lot of authors, and it breaks my heart sometimes, because they've written a great book, but they've done it on a shoestring budget. So it hasn't been edited professionally. The cover looks like they've put it, used it on Canva and they just put it on. It hasn't been formatted and typesetted. That's the interior design. It hasn't been done correctly. Again, going back to these stupid shortcuts that human beings have, we really should be focused on content. What does it matter if the book doesn't look professional? If the content is amazing, that should be all that matters. Is that what the average human being is like? Absolutely not. We judge a book on the way it feels. And if it doesn't feel professional, if it doesn't look like it's been professionally designed and edited and formatted, we assume the content is not good. And therefore, we don't give any weight. And therefore, we don't give the author the credibility and the gravitas they deserve. So what was the point in writing the book then? We've now just defeated the whole point of writing a book, which is why I worry when people come to me and they say, they want to work with me and they say, I have a budget of $1,000. I'm like, I've even had mentors say, well, maybe you should create something for that budget. And I was like, I refuse to create something for that budget because I'm just taking money from people, but they won't be getting the results, because you can't really, if you want to write a book that turns you into an authority and a thought leader on your subject, it needs to be done well. It needs to be written professionally, it needs to be edited professionally, it needs to be designed and formatted professionally. And then even after the fact, if you really want to get it out there in the big way, you need people like you, Johanna, you need people like social media experts, you need PR experts, you need people who are going to get the book out. If you don't really have a budget for that sort of thing, then why are you writing the book? If you're writing the book for creative reasons, then go for your life. Who am I to stop you? Do it. But if you're writing a book because you really want to change people's hearts and minds, especially when it comes to animal ethics and the way we treat them, then you need to have a budget behind you. And if you don't have a budget behind you, then you're wasting a lot of your time and energy. So I'm sorry if I've broken some people's sort of dreams there. I'd rather break people's dreams now than they go through all the time and effort and spend some money getting a book done, and then it's just sat there on Amazon and no one knows about it. That's worse,
Yeah, well, yeah, that makes sense, and I'm glad you say it like it is. I'm curious. I have kind of 2 questions. How, I'm sure the situations change, or everybody's case is a bit individual, but like on average, how long is the process from if working with you, from idea to a like finished book? And then another question, could you maybe share like a success story of somebody you've worked with, how they've made impact?
Yeah, absolutely. So working with me, the planning and writing phase, most of my clients plan and write their books within 12 weeks. They usually put in about 4 to 5 hours work a week. So it's actually very doable. A lot of people are very surprised. I think that's why they come to me, because I'm working with people who are just so busy that they don't have time to write a book, and they don't have time. They're not even able to give themselves half a day off a week to work on it. So they need something that they can literally just do whenever they've got half an hour to spare or an hour spare. They want to be able to get on with a book. So therefore, I've got like a very modular program, which is very different. And I mean, let me give you a sort of a clue. So a lot of people who write books, you'll know this, Johanna, because you're a writer, so I know you'll be very clued up about this. But the average person who writes a book for the first time, they tend to write a book in the same way they read a book, from beginning to end. You'll know as a writer, that is the worst way to write a book. Absolute worst way to write a book. You don't actually write the beginning, then the middle and the end. You don't write that. We do it completely modular. So I always say you never write the introduction and the summary chapter. That you leave to the end, because it's very difficult to introduce something that doesn't even exist yet. And then even in the chapters, you don't write the introduction and the summary of the chapter. You write the middle of the chapter first, Then you're able to introduce what you've written. You can summarize it. Then you do all the chapters that way, and then you top and tail it with the introduction and the summary. So that's just one, hint. But there's lots of other ways. I've basically kind of hacked the writing system, the book writing system. I've written 7 of them, just to give you an idea. The first one I wrote was in 2015. It took me 18 painful months. I wanted to stick pins in my eyes at the end of it. It was just so, and the only reason I carried on, I wanted to actually give up after 9 months. I wanted to just go back to my client and just say, I told you I'm not a book writer, so I can't do this. I only carried on because the deposit he gave me, I'd spent it and I couldn't even give him a refund anymore. So I was stuck writing this goddamn book that I really didn't want to write. But it's like, how do I get myself out of this? I was stupid. I went off to a tropical island and spent his money. So I was just living it up. And then 9 months later, think, why the hell did I go on that holiday and spend all of that money? If I had it, I could have given him the money back. But strangely enough, now I look back and think, thank God I wasn't sensible, because I wouldn't be doing what I do now if I'd given up at that point. But by the time I'd written my 7th book as a ghostwriter, I did it in 5 weeks. Wow. So 18 months to 5 weeks. So that's when I figured out, I've hacked the system now. I know how to do this and how to do it in the right steps. So something that should take you months, if not years, can be done in a matter of weeks. So yeah, I would say 12 weeks to plan and write. And then I have a team of editors, designers, formatters, all ethical vegans, of course. They take about another 12 weeks to edit, design, and publish the book. So all in all, you're looking at about 6 months for you to plan and write, and then for it to go and be published on the various platforms. Okay. So that answers your first question. Your second question was a success. Oh God, I feel like a mother who's being told to choose between her children, and it's like, I can't choose between my children. Let me actually show you 2 of them. Actually, these are all my authors, so let me actually show you. Okay, so because I do work with non-vegans as well, but the reason I choose to do that, because I genuinely believe, because I work with people who are genuinely good, they're social entrepreneurs, B Corp founders, I found that by working with me, start to become more plant-based. I think just I rub off on them. So for me, I feel, even though my entire operation is vegan, but if I just work with vegans, I feel I'd be making a lesser impact than if I work with people who are doing good, because eventually they will make that link and be like, hang on a minute, how can I be so good in this aspect of my life, but then I'm contributing to so much trauma and pain in this other part of my life? So these are 2 of my clients. So this one, Gen Z Plant Powered, this is from Kimberly. And her book, she is a teen and she's a child and teen psychologist. And she found out a few years ago there's a huge link between eating animal products and teenage mental health issues. And she's written a book, and this is for Gen Z. That's why it's called Gen Z at the top there. It's for anyone under the age of 25 who's suffering from mental health issues, whether that's ADHD, depression, whatever it is, and how they can eat better to actually alleviate a lot of their mental health symptoms. And this has been huge because she's already a teen, child and teen psychologist, but this has allowed her now to be on so many podcasts and radio shows and making that link, and she's doing really great. I'm always say this actually, just to give you another reason why my imprint is still Let's Tell You Story Publishing. A lot of people ask me and say, why is your imprint Let's Tell You Story Publishing? Why isn't it the vegan publisher? That's what your publishing house is called. I said, well, yes, but I'm not writing books for vegans. They're already great. I'm not writing books for you, Johanna and Brieanah. You're already awesome. You're vegan. Okay. I'm wanting my authors to write books to people who are not vegan, or if they're B Corp founders or social entrepreneurs, people who don't realize that they're harming other human beings by things that they're doing. So if I have the vegan publishers splash on the back of people's books, we all know that sometimes people have a negative idea of what it is to be vegan, and that's why I've kept my imprint as Let's Tell You Story Publishing, which really can't offend anybody, can it? There's something wrong with you if that offends you. So that's why I've kept it. But because she's talked, this book has allowed her to get on so many platforms, speaking to non-vegans, speaking to non-vegan teens, but also speaking to parents and getting them to understand that what they're feeding their teen or their child could be affecting their mental health. So that's really been instrumental for her to reach an audience that she normally isn't able to reach. She is a psychologist, so normally she's working with people one-to-one. This is allowing her to reach many people instead of on a one-to-one basis. And then this lady, so this is Tiffany. Tiffany's based in Texas, probably the most non-vegan state in the US. I think it might be illegal to be vegan in Texas. It's crazy, you know, how non-vegan they are. She was born legally blind. She had many congenital diseases. She was just born with so many issues. And she was told that she's very unlikely to live really beyond the age of 40, 45, because she had so many issues. She went plant-based in her 30s. And now she's healthier than she was as a newborn baby. So she now realizes that, you know, these things that we tell ourselves, like, oh, this just runs in my family. This Texans do this a lot because they eat so much meat and dairy. They'll say things like, oh, type 2 diabetes runs in my family. Heart disease runs in my family. It's like, no, terrible food runs in your family. That's not, you know, these things are not just something that you have because you got a bad gene somewhere from your ancestors. That's not what's happened. It's what you're doing to your body now. And this has been huge for her. And I was so happy to publish her because someone like me going into Texas and saying, guys, you shouldn't be eating, they'll just laugh me out the state. They'll be like, what the hell do you know? You're like a British Indian woman who knows nothing about our lifestyle and what we do here. But to have a Texan born and raised say, guys, this is wrong. You're killing yourselves. You're killing the people you love around you by doing what you're doing. This has had such a huge effect on non-vegan Texans who are actually now thinking, maybe she's right. Maybe even if I'm not going to go vegan, I'm going to start cutting down and see if I feel better by cutting down. So yeah, that's the effect that you can have when you publish books like this. It's reaching non-vegans. It's not reaching vegans. I do have one client at the moment who's writing a book for vegans. And the reason why I've okayed it is he's going to be talking about the mental health issues we suffer as vegans because of the things that we've seen. It's, you know, a form of post-traumatic stress disorder, really. So that, I thought that is quite important. So that is going to be my first book that's actually for vegans. But every other book is not actually for vegans or people who are into social entrepreneurship or ethical business. It's convincing the world that they need to be more ethical and sustainable and more sociable.
That's really cool. And you kind of answered one of my questions, which was going to be about how do you market your business? Because obviously you're talking about, you know, I don't just attract vegans. I want to attract those omnivores. I want to bring different people into the conversation. So I'll kind of amend my question. And Johanna, I think I'm going to, in the interest of time, combine a few questions. Okay. So when we start thinking about marketing businesses, I'm a big TikTok user, right? So I'm on Book Talk and like do we need to be thinking about, you know, less traditional ways of getting a book out there, and maybe you could even speak to some of those misconceptions. Maybe Book Talk is a misconception, you know.
It is.
What can our listeners think? Do you have advice for some of our listeners they start thinking about marketing their business or their potential book?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I would say don't get overwhelmed. I mean, Johanna will agree with me here. There's so much now out there that people are bewildered. They're kind of like, well, even just social media. It's like, well, which platform should I be on? And then it's like, what kind of content should I be putting there? You know, and it's just so bewildering. I am on Book Talk as well, but what I've noticed on Book Talk is a lot of it is to do with fiction or autobiographies and that sort of thing. So there is Book Talk for business books, but they tend to be very high level business books. So, you know, the latest one from Bill Gates, that kind of thing. That's not what your book is going to be about. Okay. So I wouldn't worry so much about Book Talk. I'm keeping an eye on it, seeing if anything changes. But so far, my PR experts tell me that they're not even bothering. They're keeping an eye on it, but they're not even bothering with Book Talk. Because from what we can see, it's fantastic. But Book Talk, what it's really doing, those influencers are really breaking the latest fiction author. That's usually what book talk is focused on. And there is some elements of nonfiction there as well. But like I said, it tends to be very high level business books, like Bill Gates writes a book, or Elon Musk. I'm not sure I want to read a book from Elon Musk, but like, Elon Musk writes a book. You're not, that's not your competition. That's not, so I really don't bother with book talk yet, unless something changes, and something can change. What I would say is, in terms of marketing, less is more. The best way to think about it is, how do you leverage your book with what you're doing currently? That is the more intelligent way of dealing with it, because otherwise to break something completely new with your book, that's going to take a lot of time and effort, and guess what, money. It's going to create a lot of money. If you are, for example, if I did find out that book talk was the way to go, well, some of these influencers are charging thousands, literally thousands of pounds or dollars just to mention your book. And we don't even know, how do we measure how many people saw that and then got your book? And also remember, these books are not really about what you're trying to, this is something that I actually missed telling you earlier. What my clients essentially are doing is, and they're not trying to get rich off the books. That's not really, most of my clients give their books away. They're not even trying to make money from the books. I certainly don't try and make money from my book at all. The book is more of a way for me to get credibility, authority, so people go, okay, this woman knows what she's talking about. They then come into my world, and then they want to work with me. That's where my money is, and that's where my positive impact is, in getting these incredible people onto bigger platforms because they've written a book and they're taken more seriously. My book itself, I think it's made there's been 2 editions. It's been out for just over 4 years, and it's made me about $9,000. Now, I do live in a cheap part of the UK, but I can't live on $9,000 in 4 years. That's ridiculous. Like, who can live on that? But I'm not really relying on the money from my book. That's not really, like I said, most of the times I give it away to people. And I encourage that with my clients too. So really, the more clever way to think of marketing is, how do I utilize it in the current marketing that I do? So let me give you examples. So I have one lady who speaks a lot. She's always got speaking engagement. I think she goes, has 2 or 3 every month around the country that she has speaking engagements. Now she has a book that can really, because a lot of people love what a talk is all about, but then they forget. People go to these events, they go, oh, that was an inspiring talk, and then they go home and they forget. So now she has something that she can give them, and she finds a lot of these people then contact her. She mainly talks in front of CEOs or like CFOs or COOs, they're basically C-suite executives. So she's like a coach for, basically like what do you know what the C-suite executives are? They're very highly strung out there. They've got a lot on their plate at any given moment. So she kind of helps them deal with that and separate work from life and that sort of thing. So what she finds is, now that she's giving a book away to these people, some point, sometimes it's just a few weeks later, sometimes it could be a whole year later, because no one throws away a book because it feels really wrong to throw away a book. She inevitably ends up getting a call from somebody who she spoke in front of maybe months and months ago, and say, hey, I'd love for you to come in and have a chat and help me with this, and help my other C-suite executives here who are really stressed out. And and she ends up getting so many corporate gigs, and she makes a lot of money, not from the book, not from selling the book. Like I said, most of the time she gives it away, but she now uses it almost like a very clever business card. Yeah. But a business card that no one would ever throw away, because business cards we throw away, like, I've now forgotten who this is, it's now going into the recycling. Whereas a book, you'll stick it somewhere, you'll store it somewhere. I have another gentleman in the States. Now, he does a lot of direct marketing. So he actually sends things out in the mail to people, okay, and gets prospects that way. What he now does is, if he has a very targeted list, he sends a copy of his book out, and he says his conversions have now gone through the roof, because people are just amazed. Like, normally when you send something in the post, I'm sure this doesn't happen very often now. Most people don't do a direct mail, but I'm old enough, I'm showing my age now, I'm old enough to remember when we used to get lots of mail, and I always used to get excited when there was something that was lumpy that was in there. I'd be like, oh, what's in there? And I'll open it, it'll be some crappy plastic thing, and I'll be like, oh. Don't even know what that would do. Or if it's a pen, you go, oh, well, I suppose I'll keep it. I mean, it's a pen. I could do with a pen. So you stick it where all the pens are, you know. Someone sends you a book, you're like, oh my God, it's like a professionally edited and published book. You instantly feel like this person, yeah. So he does that with bigger untargeted lists of people. So sometimes he has bigger lists where he doesn't know if everybody is his target market. With those people, what he does is he doesn't put the entire book in. He just puts a bookmark in there and he says, I've given you 50% off my book. Go and get my book. And the people go to a landing page and they get 50% off his book. No, actually, he does it as free, but you just pay for the post and packaging, which is the cost of his book, basically. So like $4.99 or something like that. Again, his conversions have gone through the roof. This is the clever way of doing it. What are you doing marketing wise now? And how can the book enhance that? Then when you've got lots of money rolling into your business, now you can afford to get a PR expert who's going to get you into TV and radio, if that's what you want. Or you can now hire someone like you, Johanna, to actually be like, just write loads of content for me on social media now. But you need to, you know, to make the book, to get the quickest return on investment. And that's what I'm all about, getting my clients the quickest return on investment for writing this book, is look at what you're already doing and use the book to enhance it. Then when you've got the profits from that, reinvest it into more things that you can do to get the book out there.
Yeah. Boom. Wow. Wow. Thank you so much, Mitali. We're running out of time. Like we could totally keep talking with you for another hour. I know I want the book now, and I have a few clients in mind who should also, but that's another story. Before we go, if our listeners or viewers would like to get to know you better, where can they find out more about you? We'll also add the links to the comments, but if you'd like to share before we...
Thank you. Yes, so if you just go to theveganpublisher.com, so that's theveganpublisher.com. That's my website. That will have all the details of what I do. It's also got case studies of my clients and things that they've achieved with their books. So just go there. Or you can find me on any social media. I seem to be on all of them. I have an assistant that actually does all of that. I'm actually not on social media all that much, but people think I just live on social media because I'm everywhere. So you can just put in The Vegan Publisher, or just put in my name, Mitali Deypurkaystha. There's only, just to let you know, with that surname, there's only me and my siblings in the entire world of social media with that surname. So I'm easy to find. I'm like a stalker's wet dream, you know. It's very easy to stalk me. You will be able to find me. So just go on social media, LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok even, you will find me.
All right. Well, thank you again so much. This has been an absolute pleasure. Yeah. So, and to everybody else, I hope you enjoyed, and we'll see you again in a month, and that will be April then. Bye, everybody.
Thank you.